So welcome back, John Kirwan.
Nice to
good
be
to
here.
see you again. In terms of the state of international rugby at the moment, is it a real sort of Southern Hemisphere bias, or do you think the Northern Hemisphere can compete?
I think that the English are doing a fantastic job. I think, Stuart Lancaster has come in relatively unknown 3 or 4 years ago and done an outstanding job, brought a lot of the young guys through that he had in the academy and in the under-20 side and in the second side. So, I think he's really brought a real nice balance. I think they are a real contender for the World Cup. I think November's important for them. I think they need to get on the winning circle against Southern Hemisphere sides, so I think they need to start winning. I always remember in 2002 when Martin Johnson's team came down to New Zealand and they beat us in Wellington, and I think there was 13 men on the field at one stage. I think Neil Back and Martin Johnson were sin-binned at some stage, so it was an incredible test match, and I think that really galvanised the team and gave them the belief. France are always a worry for me. I mean, they're all up in the air. I know Philippe very well. I mark Philippe and I always say, Philippe, but then World Cup comes around and they lost 2 pool games last World Cup, which is unbelievable. So I think Ireland also are in pretty good shape, and obviously I get really worried when Warren Gatland's quiet. So he'll be sneaking away up there. I think Scotland have got their work cut out. So World Cup over here, I don't think you can say there's any favourites. I think they're 2 different styles of rugby, and I don't think people quite understand the difference. And I think it'll be harder for us to come up here and play Northern Hemisphere style rugby.
What are the differences and similarities between the rugby played in the Southern Hemisphere versus the rugby played in the Northern Hemisphere?
I think the simplest way to put it without going into all the technique of it is I think we're hit and run, whereas over here they're a little bit more hit, hold. So, for example, if you have a look at our front row and our hookers, different type of athletes to the front row and hookers over here. So you've got a bigger, more solid, sturdy guy that can really dominate at scrum time, whereas in New Zealand we've got bigger athletes who can run with the ball and do different things. I think when you have a look at the ruck, we try and send as few numbers as we can, whereas over here they're sending quite a lot of numbers into the ruck. A lot of the game is on the ground in the Northern Hemisphere. A lot of our guys have got to be on your feet. And that's just the way it is, and I think it's fantastic. I also think there's a couple of months a year where you've got to play a certain style of football in the UK and in France, and it gets cold and wet. So for me, they're the main differences. Now, the other really interesting thing for me is that sometimes Super Rugby can blow out. So normally you're winning by 10 or 15 points. In the UK especially, guys are winning by 1 or 2 points most weeks, and I think that makes them better mentally for some of the bigger competitions. So, they're the main differences for me.
Who wins test matches?
Leadership, the ability to absorb pressure and have the right decision making at the right time. That is test match rugby, and I think that is the X factor of the All Blacks at the moment. They have great leaders who make great decisions at critical moments in the game. I think it's like any business. You need leaders, you need followers, you need workers, but I think above all, the X factor of the All Blacks at the moment is decision making under intense pressure at critical times. And we've seen that very, very much this year. The Australian Test match was an amazing performance from the Australians, but the All Blacks hung in there, went through the bad patch, got in there, and then, got out of it in the end. And I think that's an incredible leadership skill. So, you've got to have a good scrum. I call them givens. Got to have a good scrum. Got to win your line-outs. You've got to win your contact. All those things are real givens at that level. And when you've got so many of the players of that standard playing, that they're normally, if you looked at the stats of the Australia-New Zealand game, what won it? Was it line-out? Was it scrum? Probably not. It was going to be coming down to decision making. And so that for me is sort of the invisible rugby that a lot of people don't see.
England-New Zealand is the one I'm most looking forward to.
We all are.
Okay, so do you think that is the most important of the autumn internationals, or do you think they're all important?
I think it's the most important for England.
Okay.
I think it is reasonably important for us. I'm really happy it's the beginning of the month, because we normally strike England late in the month, and it's big seasons. They've just come off championship. They've travelled around the world twice, so the athlete is getting tired. Yeah. And it's the same when the English came down to play us in your summer. Mm-hmm. They're tired. They've had 30 premiership games. They've played the Six Nations, and it gets hard to get up. So I think that it's intriguing, because I think the English are getting better and better, and I think we're the yardstick, and they want to beat us, especially a year out from the World Cup. So there's lots riding on it. I think it's exciting, and so I'll be sitting there thinking, which way is this going to go? So I think it's one of the most exciting games for a long time.
Wales notoriously struggle against, the likes of Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. They've got some big tests coming up in Wales. Do you think this is important for them?
Yeah, look, I think that one of the most disappointing things that happened in the last World Cup was Warburton getting sent off. I thought they were really starting to peak. I think that Warren's done a great job in finding the style of rugby that really suits Wales, and I think he's got a group of players that believe in him and believe in the way, and actually believe that they can do this. And I think that while some of his players are starting to get towards the end, I think he's got enough experience to be able to, perform at the next level. But they're focusing on the World Cup. I don't think they'll be as concerned as the English at this stage. I think Gats knows what he's doing. He'll keep his cards close to his chest, play a little bit of poker, might try a few guys in these internationals, so that he's extending his squad. Like I said to you before, injuries can really derail your World Cup. So I think he'll be a little less concerned about these autumn internationals, and be trying to build a squad.